Have you ever felt small in the face of an immense challenge? Have you ever confronted a problem so big that it seemed impossible to overcome? Well, you are not alone. In fact, some of the most inspiring stories in the Bible deal precisely with this. Ordinary people facing literal giants. But what if I told you that these giants were not just monsters from fairy tales? What if I told you that these epic battles have more to do with your life than you might think? Get ready for a surprising journey through the pages of the Bible, where we will uncover the secrets behind the defeat of the two most dangerous giants ever recorded in the Scriptures. You will be amazed to realize how these ancient stories can be the key to overcoming the giants in your own life. Forget everything you thought you knew about David and Goliath. The story is much deeper and more shocking than you can imagine. And wait until you meet Og, the giant king who made Goliath look like a dwarf. So are you ready to challenge your beliefs, expand your horizons, and perhaps find the courage to face your own giants? Stay with us, because in the next few minutes, you will discover how to be greater than any challenge life throws your way. In the tumultuous backdrop of the ancient Near East, where nations rose and fell like waves on the sea, the conflict between the Israelites and the Philistines stood out like a persistent storm. It was a clash not only of armies but of cultures, beliefs, and destinies. On this stage of a secular confrontation, a figure emerged who would become legendary: Goliath, the Philistine champion. The historical context of this conflict dates back centuries of rivalry. The Philistines, a people of Aegean origin who settled on the Mediterranean coast of Canaan, represented a constant threat to the Israelites. With their advanced metallurgy technology and superior military organization, the Philistines often had the upper hand on the battlefields. Their heavily fortified city-states, such as Gaza, Ashkelon, and Gath, were bastions of power that challenged the Israelite tribes still in the process of unification. It is in this geopolitical tension that Goliath emerges as the personification of Philistine might. Described in the first book of Samuel, Goliath was more than just a mere soldier. He was a living symbol of his people's strength and arrogance. His mere presence on the battlefield was enough to shake the confidence of the Israelite warriors, who felt diminished in the face of such a formidable adversary. The physical description of Goliath is one of the most striking aspects of his narrative. The biblical text is meticulous in detailing his extraordinary proportions. With an estimated height of 6 cubits and a span, which, depending on the interpretation of ancient measurements, could vary from 2.7 to 3 meters, Goliath towered like a human tower among his companions. His stature was not only impressive, it was terrifying. But it was not just his height that made Goliath a fearsome warrior. His armor and weaponry were equally impressive. The text describes a bronze helmet, a coat of mail weighing 5,000 shekels of bronze, approximately 57 kilograms, bronze greaves protecting his legs, and a spear whose shaft was like a weaver's beam. The tip of this spear, made of iron, weighed 600 shekels, about 7 kilograms. This set of weaponry not only protected Goliath, but also transformed him into a true walking war machine. The challenge posed by Goliath to the Israelites was as audacious as his appearance. For 40 days, morning and evening, he stood between the two armies and shouted his challenge: "Choose a man to fight me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, you shall be our servants and serve us." This challenge was not merely a military provocation. It was a calculated psychological attack designed to undermine the morale of the Israelites. Goliath's tactic was brilliant in its simplicity. By proposing a single combat, he not only avoided a large-scale battle that could cost many lives on both sides, but also placed the entire weight of the war on the shoulders of a single Israelite champion. It was a bold bet on his own invincibility, an unwavering confidence in his physical and martial superiority. The psychological impact of this challenge on the Israelite army was profound. The biblical text reports that King Saul and all the Israelites were dismayed and greatly afraid. This fear was not unfounded. Facing Goliath was not just risking one's own life, it was carrying the fate of an entire nation. The hesitation of the Israelites to accept the challenge was understandable, but each day that passed without a response only strengthened the position of the Philistines and further weakened Israelite morale. The figure of Goliath also offers us a window into the military culture of the time. The concept of a champion representing an entire army was not uncommon in the ancient world. Such duels were seen not only as physical confrontations, but as divine judgments. The victory of a champion was interpreted as a sign of the gods' favor, capable of deciding the outcome of an entire war without the need for large-scale conflict. Moreover, the detailed description of Goliath's weaponry provides valuable insights into the military technology of the time. The Philistines were known for their expertise in metallurgy, particularly in working with iron. Goliath's elaborate armor and his iron-tipped spear were demonstrations not only of his personal strength, but also of the technological superiority of the Philistines over the Israelites, who still largely relied on bronze weapons and armor. Goliath's challenge also raises interesting questions about the tactics of psychological warfare in the ancient world. His imposing presence and taunts were clearly designed to demoralize the enemy even before the battle began. This intimidation tactic was a weapon as powerful as any sword or spear, capable of winning battles before the first blow was struck. Goliath's arrogance, so vividly portrayed in his words of challenge, also serves as a dramatic counterpoint to the faith and humility that would be demonstrated by his eventual opponent. His excessive confidence in his own strength and human capabilities stands in stark contrast to the faith in the divine that would characterize the Israelite response to his challenge. As the days passed and Goliath's challenge remained unanswered, tension in the Israelite camp grew. Fear and hopelessness threatened to erode the already weakened unity of the tribes of Israel. It was at this critical moment, when everything seemed lost, that an unlikely hero emerged, a young shepherd whose name would echo through the centuries: David. David's arrival at the Israelite camp marks a dramatic turning point in the narrative. His encounter with Goliath would not just be a confrontation between two individuals, but a clash between two diametrically opposed worldviews. On one side, confidence in brute strength and technological superiority; on the other, unwavering faith in divine power. Thus, the stage was set for one of the most famous duels in history, a confrontation that would transcend its immediate context to become a lasting metaphor for the victory of the seemingly weak over the strong, of faith over arrogance. The battle between David and Goliath was about to begin, and its outcome would change not only the course of the war between the Israelites and the Philistines, but also the fate of a nation and the course of biblical history. David's arrival at the Israelite camp marks a turning point in the biblical narrative. This seemingly insignificant young shepherd, facing the giant Goliath, was about to star in one of the most emblematic episodes of the Scriptures. The story of David and Goliath transcends the mere account of a battle. It is a parable about faith, courage, and the victory of the improbable. David was not a trained warrior, nor an experienced soldier. He was just a simple shepherd, the youngest among the sons of Jesse. His presence in the camp was almost accidental, sent by his father to bring supplies to his brothers serving in Saul's army. However, it was precisely this apparent inadequacy that made his subsequent victory even more extraordinary. Upon arriving at the camp, David encountered a scene of despair and fear. Goliath's challenge, repeated day after day, had undermined the morale of the Israelite troops. Even King Saul, once a fearless warrior, seemed paralyzed by indecision. It was in this atmosphere of widespread discouragement that David's voice rose, questioning the inaction of his compatriots in the face of the Philistines' provocations. The initial reaction to David's volunteering was one of disbelief and even scorn. How could this young shepherd without training or combat experience face a warrior of Goliath's stature? His own brothers rebuked him, accusing him of arrogance and recklessness, but David remained steadfast in his determination. What distinguished David was not his physical strength or martial skill, but his unwavering faith. When questioned about his ability to face Goliath, David spoke not of combat techniques or military strategies. Instead, he recounted his experiences as a shepherd, describing how he had protected his flock from lions and bears. To David, facing Goliath was no different from protecting his sheep. In both cases, he relied on divine protection. David's faith was not blind or naive. It was a faith forged through concrete experiences, tempered by the trials of pastoral life. When he declared that the Lord who delivered him from the paw of the lion and the bear would also deliver him from the hands of the Philistine, He was not expressing a vague hope, but a deep conviction based on his personal experience with the divine. The contrast between David and Goliath could not be more striking. On one side, a giant clad in armor, confident in his strength and superior weaponry. On the other, a young shepherd armed only with a sling and a few stones, but clad in unwavering faith. This contrast was not only physical but represented a clash between two worldviews: reliance on human strength versus trust in divine power. David's refusal to wear the armor offered by Saul is a crucial moment in the narrative. By rejecting traditional battle gear, David was not just opting for a different tactic. He was making a profound statement about the nature of the battle he was about to fight. It would not be a confrontation decided by brute strength or technological superiority, but a test of faith and courage. The moment of confrontation is described with cinematic vividness. Goliath, upon seeing the young David approach, reacted with disdain and insults. For the Philistine giant, the choice of such an opponent was an affront, almost a tasteless joke. His mocking words promising to give David's flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field reveal not only his arrogance, but also his complete misunderstanding of the nature of the confrontation that was about to occur. David's response to these provocations is one of the most powerful and quoted speeches in the Bible. With words laden with conviction and authority, David declares that he comes in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel. He prophesies not only his personal victory, but the defeat of the entire Philistine army. At this moment, David speaks not just as a young shepherd, but as a spokesman for divine will. The climax of the battle is as swift as it is decisive. With a precision that can only be attributed to divine intervention, the stone thrown by David finds its mark, striking Goliath in the forehead. The giant falls, and within moments, David uses Goliath's own sword to decapitate him, sealing his victory in an indisputable manner. Goliath's fall had an immediate and dramatic impact on the battlefield. The Philistines, seeing their champion defeated, fled in panic. The Israelites, in turn, moved from the paralysis of fear to a vigorous pursuit, turning what could have been a humiliating defeat into a resounding victory. But the significance of this battle goes far beyond its immediate military consequences. David's victory over Goliath became a powerful symbol in the Judeo-Christian tradition, representing the triumph of faith over fear, courage over intimidation, and the seemingly weak over the ostentatiously strong. This story also marks the beginning of David's rise as a prominent figure in the biblical narrative. From an obscure shepherd, he becomes a national hero, paving the way for his eventual coronation as king of Israel. The battle against Goliath was not just a test of physical courage, but a moment of spiritual trial that would define David's character and destiny. The lesson derived from this episode resonates through the centuries. True strength does not necessarily lie in physical power or technological superiority, but in unwavering faith and moral courage. The story of David and Goliath continues to inspire those facing seemingly insurmountable challenges, reminding us that with faith and determination, even the most formidable obstacles can be overcome. Thus, the battle between David and Goliath remains not only a historical account, but also a timeless parable about courage, faith, and the transformative power of trust in something greater than ourselves. It invites us to reflect on our own battles and to find within ourselves the courage to face our giants, whatever they may be. While Goliath is undoubtedly the most famous giant in the Bible, there is a second colossus that deserves equal attention: Og, the king of Bashan. This formidable monarch represents a threat as significant as his Philistine predecessor, although his story is less known to the general public. Og emerges in the biblical narrative at a crucial moment in Israel's history. The chosen people, after decades of wandering in the desert, were finally approaching the Promised Land. However, before they could claim their inheritance, the Israelites had to face various obstacles, including the powerful kingdom of Bashan, ruled by the giant Og. The kingdom of Bashan, located east of the Jordan River, was known for its wealth and fertility. Described in the scriptures as a land of fortified cities with high walls, gates, and bars, Bashan was not an adversary to be underestimated. Its strategic position and natural resources made it a coveted prize and a formidable obstacle on Israel's path to Canaan. At the forefront of this prosperous kingdom was Og, a monarch whose physical stature rivaled the greatness of his domain. The book of Deuteronomy describes him as the last of the Rephaim, a race of giants that inhabited the region. This designation not only highlights Og's exceptional nature, but also positions him as a final link in an ancient and feared lineage. Og's physical description, while less detailed than that of Goliath, is equally impressive. The biblical text specifically mentions his iron bed, a piece of furniture so extraordinary that it deserves special mention in the scriptures. This bed, measuring 9 cubits in length and 4 in width, approximately 4 meters by 1.8 meters, depending on the interpretation of ancient measurements, serves as a tangible testament to the colossal proportions of the king. The mention of this iron bed is not a mere picturesque detail. It offers us valuable insights into the culture and technology of the time. The use of iron, a relatively rare and precious metal in that period, suggests not only Og's wealth, but also the technological advancement of his kingdom. Furthermore, the fact that this bed was preserved and known suggests that Og was not only a ruler, but a legendary figure whose fame extended beyond the borders of his own kingdom. The confrontation between Israel and the kingdom of Bashan was not a casual encounter, but a decisive moment in the journey of the chosen people. Moses, the leader of the Israelites, received a clear divine order. "Do not be afraid of him, for I have delivered him into your hands, along with all his army and his land." This divine assurance was necessary, as the challenge presented by Og and his kingdom was formidable. The battle against Og and his army is described in the Book of Numbers with a brevity that contrasts with its historical significance. The text states that the Israelites struck him, his sons, and all his people, leaving no survivors, and took possession of his land. This decisive victory not only eliminated a significant threat, but also secured for the Israelites a rich and strategic territory. Og's defeat had implications that went beyond the military aspect. Symbolically, it represented Israel's victory over one of the last remnants of a race of giants that once dominated the region. It was a tangible sign of the fulfillment of divine promises, and a portent of what was to come in the conquest of Canaan. The figure of Og also provides us with a window into the political and cultural complexities of the region during Israel's pre-monarchical period. Bashan was not just an isolated kingdom, but part of a network of alliances and rivalries that characterized the ancient Levant. The defeat of such a powerful monarch certainly reverberated beyond the borders of his own kingdom, altering the balance of power in the region. It is interesting to note how Og's narrative connects with other elements of biblical history. For example, the territory of Bashan is mentioned in several other passages of the scriptures, often as a symbol of fertility and abundance. Victory over Og, therefore, was not just a military achievement, but the acquisition of land that would become an integral part of Israel's inheritance. The story of Og also serves as an interesting counterpoint to the narrative of Goliath. While Goliath is defeated in a singular duel by a young shepherd, Og faces the entire army of Israel. This difference highlights the diversity of Israel's experiences on its journey to the Promised Land, demonstrating that divine intervention can manifest in various ways. Moreover, the figure of Og raises fascinating questions about the nature of kingship and power in the ancient world. As a giant who ruled a prosperous kingdom, Og embodied the common belief that the right to govern was tied to physical strength and stature. His defeat at the hands of the Israelites, therefore, was not just a military victory, but a challenge to an entire conception of power and authority. The story of Og, the king of Bashan, while less known than that of Goliath, is equally rich in meaning and implications. It reminds us that the challenges faced by Israel on its journey to the Promised Land were varied and formidable. Each victory, whether against a singular champion like Goliath or against a powerful kingdom like Og's, served to reaffirm the people's faith in their God and in their destiny. Thus, Og remains a fascinating figure in the biblical narrative, a giant whose defeat marked a crucial turning point in the history of Israel. His story invites us to reflect on the nature of power, the challenges of faith, and the fulfillment of divine promises, themes that continue to resonate with scripture readers to this day. The defeat of Og, the gigantic king of Bashan, at the hands of the people of Israel, represents a pivotal moment in the biblical narrative. This episode, narrated with a mix of historical details and theological significance, marks not only a crucial military victory, but also a significant step in Israel's spiritual and territorial journey toward the Promised Land. Under the leadership of Moses, the people of Israel were in the final stages of their long pilgrimage through the desert. The conquest of Bashan was not just another battle. It was a decisive test of the faith and determination of the Israelites, as well as a tangible demonstration of the fulfillment of divine promises. The setting of this confrontation was the fertile plateau of Bashan, a region known for its agricultural wealth and fortified cities. The challenge before Israel was formidable. They would not only have to face a well-equipped and numerous army, but also overcome the psychological terror imposed by the imposing figure of Og, the last of the legendary Rephaim. The biblical narrative emphasizes the crucial role of Moses at this critical moment. As the spiritual and military leader of Israel, Moses received a direct message from God. "Do not be afraid of him, for I have delivered him into your hands, along with his whole army and his land. Do to him what you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon." This divine assurance not only strengthened Moses' resolve, but also served to reaffirm the people's confidence in the protection and guidance of their God. The mention of Sihon, another king defeated by Israel, establishes an important precedent in the narrative. It reminds the Israelites, and readers, that this was not the first time they faced an apparently insurmountable enemy. The previous victory over Sihon served as an encouraging precedent, a tangible reminder that with divine help, even the most formidable opponents could be defeated. The account of the battle itself is notably succinct, but loaded with meaning. The biblical text simply states that the Israelites struck him, his sons, and all his people, leaving no survivor, and took possession of his land. This brevity does not diminish the magnitude of the event. Rather, it emphasizes the decisive and complete nature of Israel's victory. The total defeat of Og and his people is significant for several reasons. First, it eliminated one of the last great threats on Israel's way to Canaan. The fall of such a powerful and well-established kingdom as Bashan certainly reverberated throughout the region, possibly discouraging future resistance to Israel's march. Furthermore, the conquest of Bashan provided the Israelites with a strategic territorial base east of the Jordan River. This region, known for its fertility and vast pastures, would become the home of the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and half the tribe of Manasseh. The acquisition of this territory was not just a military victory, it was also a partial fulfillment of the divine promise of a land flowing with milk and honey. The symbolism of Og's defeat goes beyond the territorial aspect. As the last of the Rephaim, his fall represented the end of an era. The giants who had terrorized the peoples of the region for so long were finally defeated. This victory served as a powerful testimony to God's power, capable of overthrowing even the most fearsome enemies of his people. Moses' leadership during this episode deserves special attention. Although he would not enter the Promised Land, his role in the conquest of Bashan was crucial. His unwavering faith and obedience to divine instructions served as a model for the people and paved the way for future conquests under Joshua's leadership. The account of the conquest of Bashan also offers insights into the military and political practices of the time. The complete destruction of the enemy, known as herem or holy war, was a common practice in the ancient Near East. In the biblical context, it is often presented as an act of divine judgment against peoples considered morally corrupt. The victory over Og had lasting repercussions in Israel's collective memory. In later scriptures, this battle is often remembered as an example of God's liberating power. Psalm 136, for example, celebrates this victory alongside other great divine acts, such as the creation of the world and the liberation from Egypt. The conquest of Bashan also set an important precedent for future generations of Israel. It demonstrated that with faith and obedience, the people could overcome even the most intimidating challenges. This lesson would be particularly relevant in the future conquests of Canaan, where Israel would face nations and cities that seemed equally invincible. The impact of this victory extended beyond Israel's borders. The news of the defeat of such a powerful king as Og surely spread quickly, influencing the perception that other peoples had of Israel. This psychological factor should not be underestimated. The fear inspired by such victories often paved the way for future conquests. It is important to note that the biblical narrative presents this victory not as a triumph of Israel's military might, but as a direct result of divine intervention. This emphasis on God's action serves to reinforce one of the central messages of Scripture: divine faithfulness and the importance of human trust and obedience. The defeat of Og by the people of Israel, therefore, is more than just a historical event. It is a crucial chapter in the narrative of redemption, a testimony to God's faithfulness to His promises, and a powerful example of what can be accomplished through faith. This story continues to inspire readers throughout the centuries, reminding us that, with God, even the most formidable giants in our lives can be overcome. Thus, the conquest of Bashan remains a defining moment in Israel's history, an episode that not only altered the geopolitical map of the region, but also strengthened the spiritual identity of a nation in formation. The fall of Og, the last of the giants, marked the beginning of a new era for the chosen people, paving the way for the great conquests that were to come in the Promised Land. As we reach the end of this journey through the pages of the Bible, exploring the stories of the two most dangerous giants, Goliath and Og, we encounter narratives that transcend time and invite us to a deep reflection on our own journey of faith and courage. These stories are not mere accounts of ancient battles. They challenge us to look at the giants in our own lives. What are the Goliaths that intimidate us today? What kingdom of Bashan seems invincible in our path? The lessons from David and the people of Israel remind us that with faith and determination, we can face challenges that seem insurmountable. But how can we apply these lessons in our daily lives? Perhaps it's time to confront that fear that has paralyzed us for so long. Or maybe it's time to take the first step towards that dream that seemed too big to achieve. How about using David's courage to finally start that project you've always wanted to, but never had the courage to begin? Think for a moment. If David had allowed himself to be intimidated by Goliath's size, how different would the story of Israel be? And what if the people had backed down in the face of Og and his powerful kingdom? Sometimes, our greatest obstacle is our own hesitation. These stories invite us to question our own self-perceived limitations. Are we underestimating ourselves, just as the Israelites initially underestimated David? Or are we overestimating our obstacles, as they did when they saw Goliath and Og? Now, I would like to hear from you. What giant in your life do you feel inspired to face after reflecting on these stories? Share in the comments. Your story might be the inspiration someone needs to confront their own Goliath. Remember, just as David did not face Goliath alone, and Israel did not conquer Bashan on its own, you are not alone in your battles. There is a community here ready to support and encourage you on your journey. If these reflections have touched you in any way, don't keep them to yourself. Share this video with someone you think needs to hear this message of courage and faith. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We have much more inspiring content coming your way, exploring the rich lessons that the Scriptures have to teach us. So what are you waiting for? Your Goliath won't defeat itself. Grab your sling, choose your 5 smooth stones, and go face your giants.
Let the Word of God touch your heart, like a light guiding you through the darkest moments. Every step in faith is a journey filled with hope. We are never alone on this path, for He is always by our side. Open your heart and let His love transform you, helping you spread that light to those around you.
Who knows? Your victory might be the next great overcoming story we share here. Until the next video, and remember,
let the Word of God touch your heart, like a light guiding you through the darkest moments. Every step in faith is a journey filled with hope. We are never alone on this path, for He is always by our side. Open your heart and let His love transform you, helping you spread that light to those around you.
No matter the size of your giant, with faith and courage, you can be greater.